and that's the thing, that we all love each other exactly the same. And that same, it's such an abundance of love that here on earth you can't even handle that frequency. You actually have to dial it down because you can't. Impactful.
Love thy neighbor as thyself.
As right. Right.
I think so often what you're saying is right before us in scripture, and yet it's interpreted completely.
And it has motives for why it's interpreted the way it is.
Hi, welcome. This is Brenda Kilhofer, and I'm your cheap mama, and I am back with Ingrid Essawova, and she is a spiritual life recovery coach and intuitive. We had an amazing first half of this podcast, which I am now certain we did not record. So it was only for benefit for Ingrid and I. And I do believe it'll benefit all of the listeners there, because we opened up some really great conversations that we're just going to dive right into. So as we were chatting, Ingrid was talking to us about the different frequencies that we are walking around in, whether it's in love, in light, or fear, and that we project that out into the world and that we attract it back. Does that pretty much sum up?
You got it. Cheap mama, you got it.
And so with that, the other thing that had come up was, Ingrid mentioned several times, was judgment. So in connecting the dots, Ingrid, I feel like when I am in front of another person and I'm making judgments about that person, right? First off, oh my gosh, horrible financial habit. Oh, this or that, whatever judgments I'm there making about that person. One, to make that judgment, I probably need to see it in myself first. And the reality is, based on what you just said, I attracted that person into my life at that moment for some reason or another, correct? Because we're vibrating at the same frequency. So correct. What might those judgments tell me about myself, or areas that I get to maybe dig in and sit down with you to figure out, especially if those judgments maybe trigger me somehow.
So let's take judgment and put it into little categories. First of all, we're taught early on in life for expectations on others. And when our expectations are not met, we form judgments. And here on earth, that is perfectly acceptable. And even though we keep on thinking and saying, oh, people have the right to be themselves and you should be yourself and no judgment, there's no clear view in sight that that's going to be abolished. Because again, when you're connected outside of yourself, you're also not taking that accountability. So when there is an expectation, there is a judgment. And it's something that we feel here as humans, that the boundary is open to have that judgment, and we feel justified and we feel right. Because when you have a certain title, like a mother, a father, a sibling, a boss, a politician, a driver, a Visa customer service rep, whoever that may be, that certain things need to be done a certain way. And if they're not, they are being judged. So not knowing any different, growing up in life, not knowing any different, and not knowing the reason why it would be healthy not to judge. So I think there's about that education, not realizing and not really caring. So when we judge, it's actually, nothing is about other people. We can't. So the judgment, as you said, Brenda, is on ourselves, because we can't be mad or angry, frustrated, stressed about other people. It's about what we have to live with and what we have to live without. And therefore, we're back to that wound again. If we don't have a list of what we have to live with or what we have to live without, if we don't have that list, then there will not be a wound. Therefore, it won't be a trigger. Therefore, it won't be a judgment. So we judge because we don't know any different, because we really don't see it in other people. We don't hear it. We don't see it. We are not educated on how much of an impact it actually has on us. And it really is all about the wounds. But also remember, we are here, in my experience and what I teach at Simply True, we are here to face those particular situations so we can have less judgment. How are you supposed to evolve and shift unless if you have the experience? If one of the experiences is for you to no longer have judgment, you have to have judgment in order to work through that and to evolve, to then recognize you no longer have judgment. And that's the thing about judgment, it's that control. You feel like you have to control if you are in the judgment mode. And when you release, you no longer have judgment. You just be. You just simply be. It's easy. It's free. It's weightless. Judgment, weight on your shoulders, controlling, outside of yourself.
So I think the awesome thing is that when we can begin to recognize that we have judgment versus walking around blindly, feeling righteous and correct and right and not calling it judgment, that becomes the real empowerment place, is when, I recognize that perhaps I'm in a place of judgment versus not even recognizing it. Because at
you
that
have to
point,
be educated on that, though.
Yes.
You don't know what you don't know. So where do we get the education to realize why? Even the people go, yeah, I know, I'm still judging, I'm doing my best, but do they really understand?
Right.
So the judgment comes from the expectation. The judgment is there on the surface, but the core wound is expectations. And when you release the expectations, there's no more judgment. So the reason that people have a little bit of a challenging time with letting go of judgment, because that's just the surface. They're not going down deeper to the cause. And then not having expectation, oh my goodness, that means I have to be 100% accountable. And that's a whole, like I said, like a whole new podcast all on its own.
Yeah, accountability and what that really looks like. What does that? Because I think so often we think of accountability as, at least when you get involved in businesses and small businesses, you look at accountability as somebody else holding you accountable to certain things that you say you want to achieve. And at the end of the day, I think accountability is more about my own. I'm responsible
for everything, your thoughts, your words, your actions, 100%. And then you're like, well, hold on. I'm sitting at a red light in a car minding my own business, and then someone hits me from behind. How can I be accountable for that?
Well, I chose to be there at that point in time, at that moment.
And that's a part of I look at as your universal contract in order to shift and grow with something. Because then there might be blame that person did it. There may be level of not forgiving them. And maybe you need something that that impactful, no pun intended, in order to reach your higher self, for the most challenging level, because things are very challenging, let's say a 1, and then not so challenging a 10. Maybe you do need a 2 or a 1. So you can have the opportunity in life to be the most forgiving. If you can forgive everyone for everything on earth, then you are the most forgiving. That pathway of enlightenment, of being awoke in that area of forgiveness, you have to have things that are so impactful. How else would you reach the highest level of forgiveness, for example?
I remember you shared with me that, working on, let's say, forgiveness, that, perhaps some of us, maybe need to work on getting from a 7 to a 10 when it comes to forgiveness, whereas perhaps somebody else might need to work on getting from a level 1 to a 10 on forgiveness. And I believe the example you gave me was the founder of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. That could be a 1 to 10 need to get to, because certainly it's a bigger challenge, a bigger wound.
It's the list of what you have to live with and what you have to live without. The list is huge.
Oh yeah, exactly.
That's why, yes.
Especially if you're living without your child as a result of.
Right. And the example was, you have 4 children, they all go out on a Friday night, and a drunk driver comes out that night, and you know the rest. So, and for you to be able to forgive that drunk driver, if you're able to do that, and you hit in Simply True, a 1 is the most challenging. So you hit that 1, you hit that 100%. And guess what? If you can forgive a drunk driver for no longer having your kids here on this plane, you can forgive anyone for anything. And therefore you no longer have to have experiences which challenges your ability to forgive, because you already did it. Nothing will be repeated as a loop here on earth if you got it.
I have a mentor.
How many times did I go, oh, I know how to do this. I know how to do it. Okay, come on, universe. I'm ready. Come on. Give it to me. Give it to me. They won't give it to me. No.
Right.
Fine. They won't, because I already got it. If I don't got it, first it's like this, right? Hello, this just affected you. Then it's like this, and then it's a punch, and then it's a kick. And then you finally go, okay. I hear you. What? Okay, now you listened. You couldn't listen when it was just a little tap. You had to listen when it was a kick.
So what you're saying, if I'm walking around saying, I've got this, I've got forgiveness, right? And then something else comes and punches me in the face.
Let's see if you got forgiveness. But the odds are the universe is the perfect scheduler. It's right on. The only reason it's giving it to you because there is an element, a part of the wound that is not fully healed. Yeah. Nothing will come to you if you, in terms of a challenge, nothing will come to you as a challenge if you don't need an opportunity to work on it.
I have a mentor that always says the lesson will continue until the lesson is learned.
Yeah. And for me, it's until you disconnect from the motherboard outside of yourself and you connect to yourself, that connection is firmly in, then you will no longer need that, because the whole aim is that all cables, all connections disconnect from that motherboard outside of yourself and connect into you, because the more you're connected with yourself, the more you're connected to source, and the more you're able to do things, because we are very, 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 very powerful. We can do so many things.
Absolutely. So help me understand when you say the motherboard outside of ourself versus being connected to
Yourself.
myself, and then in turn to source. What is the motherboard outside of myself?
It's the people, things, concepts. We are waiting here. If you're connected outside of yourself to like a motherboard outside of yourself, which equal people, things, concepts, the weather, that type of thing, you are waiting to see how things will develop so you can decide how you will feel about yourself. You're waiting for approval. You're waiting for people to approve, to like you, to belong, to this, to that. Well, how has that worked for us so far? We are waiting for people in our minds on earth to do the right thing. We have an expectation, and that has not worked for us really ever. We keep on, even we take that cable off and we put it right to the nodule right beside it. We're like, okay, now this will work. Well, people, I have news for you. When you keep on doing the same thing over and over and over and waiting for a different result, there is a definition for that. Called insanity.
Absolutely. I think we've all heard that over and over again, and yet so often
we keep doing it.
We continue to do that. We keep doing it.
Because we don't have any other answers.
And yet the answers are truly within ourselves and that connection to source.
Yes.
And for those, since we didn't record that first segment, I want to go back to that connection to source and the question that I had asked. When you talk about a source connection and being an intuitive and spirituality versus religion, and you had said that that's a group thing, what is that meaning for you, for Ingrid?
Okay, so religion has rules and it's a group following. Spirituality, there are no rules and it's an individual journey like no other. Even if you're twins, both of you have different journeys to take. And there are no rules, only cause and effect with no judgment whatsoever. If you want to, it's about being a fit with your path. Here is your path. Does this fit? This relationship, is this a fit with my path? Is this a match? This food I'm about to eat, is that a fit for my stomach? Maybe for my taste buds, those apple turnovers, but not my stomach. Is this piece of furniture? Is this work? My career, is it a fit with the true, authentic me? Everything is just regarding a fit. So therefore, if it's a fit, there can't be rules. Because what is absolutely fit for one person is not necessarily a fit for another. There's no wrong, there's no right, there's no bad, there's no good. It just simply is. And you're able to grow with flexibility, freedom, without boundaries for yourself. Boundaries, hold on, without someone else telling you your boundaries. There you go. Without someone else outside of you telling your boundaries. You create your boundaries and your standards and your policies for yourself to match your fit. Only you know it. You're not creating them for other people because that would be an expectation. You create it for your do's and don'ts for you. Only you can be told. And and the whole aim is that there will be no doubt and no fear. So that's the whole thing. If there's no doubt, there's no fear, there's freedom, and there's light, and it's weightlessness at its making.
Awesome. So, so what I'm hearing is that the boundaries that are set by many religions, if we adopt those into our lives, those are rules.
Correct.
Versus, okay.
They're rules, and they're pretty much unshakable. Like, they're pretty much in stone.
Mm-hmm.
Even your own boundaries and standards, they are appropriate for you at that time. But maybe in a month or two or a year from now, you will adjust those boundaries because life changes. It's like having a company and you adapt same procedures year after year after year. Well, if the company is growing and technology is growing, there has to be changes in the policies, in the boundaries, in order for you to continue to thrive and to reach certain goals. It can't be rigid, because then again, rigidity does not allow flexibility and insight and freedom and light.
So from that perspective, so you shared light and love. So why wouldn't there be boundaries for, say, things like things that would harm somebody else? Whether I don't know, maybe things like murder, or things like hate speech, things like that. Are you saying that those are boundaries to set personally, and that they can't apply to everybody across to all beings?
So let me see if I hear you. Like, you're thinking, for those people that go, okay, well, I can do whatever I want, so I'm going to go and kill, or I'm going to say this hate speech if there's no rules. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah. So I'd apply it to self, like, but I guess ultimately for those that would say, well, there has to be rules. There has to be, rules that
in terms of laws, to keep us safe.
Yes.
But for our emotional, mental, physical, energetic growth,
mm-hmm.
I don't believe in rules.
I see.
Yes.
So mm-hmm. That comparison would be, for instance, so I'll just take an easy one. The Our Father prayer, Our Father who art in heaven, right? Mm-hmm. So in scripture, it says, this is how you pray. What you're saying is that's a rule that, that you're saying that's a rule brought on by religion, and how you pray is in bringing Correct. It to a spiritual version. How you pray is
correct. And if that prayer absolutely resonates with you and it is your go-to, hallelujah, wonderful, keep it up. And if it doesn't, what does? It's when we're stuck and we're bound by these boundaries that we can't, but our spirit is hungry and keeps drawing us to, suddenly we're intuitive, suddenly we're this and that, and you're bringing that back in, going, no, I'm not allowed to be because I'm told I'm not allowed to be. Do you understand what that can happen? What happens, right? And here you are. It's about restricting your freedom to be yourself, and others having judgments on you, and you having a judgment on yourself that this is not good, this is not good. Well, if you're naturally being yourself and you're naturally being, you can do so many things. Like I said, we only use 3 to 7% of our brain. And if you're accessing 11% or 20%, who is to stop you? You're a beautiful, perfect being. We all are perfect. When people say we are not perfect, we are perfect. And the reason you don't feel perfect is because you're disconnected from yourself. And when you're connected, it's perfect. Just like nature is perfect. It doesn't matter if there's a full leaf on a tree, half a leaf, a quarter of a leaf, and the caterpillar's eating the leaf. It's perfect. And so are we. We don't give ourselves credit, and it's not ego-based, it's love. And could you imagine when we have the freedom and we have the love within ourselves and we're able to be free, could you imagine how we impact those around us? And could you imagine the advice that we give to others and our children? And it's about thriving in freedom. Again, that control, when you hold on really tight, there's no light, there's no flexibility, there's no movement, and you can't see inside. But when you let go of your fists, you see light, you see flexibility, and you see movement. So
I love how you describe when you first responded, you said, the rules for our safety. And I think it's fitting to remember right now that as a country, that is the basis that we were founded on, that government, their only responsibility was to govern for our safety. And
that was probably the original.
Yeah, that was the original, right? Exactly. That was the original intention. And then you bring up
and money got in the way.
Right. You bring up control and that desire to control money, to control people, to control the outcome of every little thing. Now we have laws upon laws and rules upon rules that govern our very existence and our freedom in many cases to be, in many, right now, I think I had recently seen from a pastor in California that they weren't allowed to meet and worship how they chose. And you're saying that we get to choose that we get to be free to do that. And yet now government has created circumstances, reasons to create rules and boundaries for us. So in our own thirst, our search for responsibility, because you brought that up, we're responsible, right? So in being responsible, when all of that framework is going on around us as a people, how do I then go back to my core and be responsible for my own boundaries when I might feel or see that that's what's going on around me? Because I believe when we all start being responsible for that, I believe we can start to shift and change that is around us.
Right. I think that it's a very, like a pea in a pot. It's too, when we value on things that's going on outside of ourselves and that we're not allowed to do this, we're not allowed to do that. First of all, that's only temporary. Mm-hmm. And if you're putting so much weight on that you are becoming unbalanced and unaligned, mm-hmm. it really doesn't impact the spiritual journey. It doesn't. It's what impacts the spiritual journey is your triggers. And again, what you have to live with and what you have to live without, and gratefulness. So like I say, when I did a post back when COVID first started, if you have a meal, if you have water once a day, if you have one meal once a day, and if you have a safe shelter, you are so blessed. And if you happen to have anything more than that, oh my goodness, beyond blessed. So it's more like looking at the glass half full than constantly looking at it half empty. Look at what opportunities you have, what you have moment to moment, and express the gratefulness of it. Don't pass it by. Be in the moment. When you're in the moment, you're able to see, oh, there's this and this and this relationship and that relationship, and I get to have clothes on that are clean. I can go and now go for a walk. I can do this. I can do that. I can do, oh my gosh, an abundance of miracles that you're able to have moment to moment. And that's what is important. And how are you impacting other people with love and light? And how are you evolving? So the things that are happening outside of ourselves that perhaps create a restricting, it's so tiny compared to the bigger picture. And like I said, it's temporary. If we're making it, it's what are you making more important than the center of your being? I'm going to say that again. What are you making more important than the center of your being? Are you allowing what someone said to you? Are you allowing what someone done? Okay, how to go to plan B, plan C, plan D, plan E, and give love and light to that.
Absolutely. That is so, I appreciate that, because I know when I first came to you and started working with you, it was probably going into the October timeframe. And just before we spoke, I had this huge aha that, oh my goodness, I have literally been allowing COVID thing and fear of saying the wrong thing, keeping me almost trapped inside my own self. I wasn't, and it was all about the fear of what somebody else would think. And I didn't want to post. I didn't want to get out and speak to people. I didn't want to grow my business. And then I had this aha that, like, oh my gosh, I have so much right here in the home. I'm not worried about I'm not worried about if we're going to be able to pay the bills. I'm not worried about who's watching my kids because they can't go to school each and every day. I've got so much to be grateful for. And how selfish was it of me not to love enough to go share what I had learned thus far on my journey to help others who might desire those same things get to that place. And again, I know you're probably going to have tons to say about that, because that was a judgment I placed on myself. And I guess that judgment or trigger at least snapped me out of that place that I was in right then, that was just complete, total debilitating fear of just moving forward and letting that light within shine, knowing that it was there, but just afraid of what other people would think if I did, not wanting to be judged as bragging or who knows what else, but that there was just that fear. So I love that you shared that. And you're right. Ultimately, as I move forward in the things that I'm passionate about, whether it's writing, whether it's being on a podcast with you, whether it's and we just showed that we had the one that didn't record, but yet we had a blast. We thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. And it doesn't matter if nobody ever hears it. We were completely with one another in that moment, in that time. And it was enjoyable. It was awesome. It was enjoyable. It was all of those things. And, there wasn't oh my gosh, I messed it up. No, it was like, okay, let's go on and let's jump, move ahead and see, knowing that whatever was created out of this is going to be perfect. It's going to serve who it's going to serve. And it's not going to serve who it's not going to serve. And yes, there may be some that are triggered, and there may be some that say, oh my gosh, you're nuts. Who cares?
Who cares? It just doesn't matter. And remember that our triggers is a celebration. Whenever I get triggered, I go like this. I go, yes, time to troubleshoot, time to problem solve. I love it. Challenge solve. There's no such thing as problems, only opportunities to shift and to grow. Whether it doesn't matter how fast or how slow, it's such a celebration, such a miracle.
Well, all of those things, how fast, how slow, all of that's just a judgment we place on ourselves anyway, right?
Exactly.
It doesn't. All right. So gosh, I'd love to hear a little bit about your book. Can you share with me what about the book? I know you published a book. What inspired you to write that book, and what is it that you hope the reader will gain from your book?
Wonderful. So when my child was 2 years old, so that was 1998, my family and I took a trip to Dubai. And let's go back a few days. I was reading my 2-year-old a book about sharing. And I noticed it said on the top, it was a bestseller, over such and such number have been sold. And as I was reading the book back then, I was severely triggered because I just felt that it did not give the freedom of thinking and the freedom for the child to be emotionally independent. And here I'm looking at a book that was a national bestseller and sold millions of copies. And it stayed with me for a moment of triggerness. So is that a word?
I don't know. I love that you use the word triggered.
We just made it a word, okay?
I honestly thought it was just my kids that used the word triggered. That I was this non-hit mom, and triggered was always a word that the teenagers brought out. But now it's a daily part of my vocabulary because of my friendship with you.
There you go. Yes, it is a perfect word that when we suddenly stop in our tracks, and now that button is pushed. We are triggered. That button's triggered. So a week later, we went to Dubai, and at forgive me if I don't know the time, but it's like 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, their morning prayers. And it's very haunting. It's beautiful. It's just beautiful because you hear it, regardless of what it's saying and the meaning of it, but it's just very beautiful because of the voice, and it's spread all across the land. And suddenly, intuitively, I get a download, time for you to write a book. And I go, write a book? Even when I read, I fall asleep. And now you want me to write a book? What the heck am I going to write about? And I'm told families. So families, and if you choose to take this route, this and this will happen, and this is how you feel, this is how other people will see you. But if you take this route, like plan B, this is how you will feel, this is how life will be. Here's the long term and the short term of it. So anyway, I said, okay, I'll do that. And I just started writing, and it was a family book. And then in the back, it was like for kids, I would say, I don't know, 8 to 13 years old or something, or 8 to 16, something like that. And then I had a little section in the back for parents because I realized, oh my goodness, if the kids are going to be doing this, you kind of need to have the parent support. Because if you're a kid and doing all this and your parents are doing opposite, it's a little bit challenging to stay with the rhythm. And then all at once I go, you know what? I can't do a family book first. I have to do a self book first. And then let that be to adults, and then I'll do my family later. Then the book, because I was working full time in our business, we were growing our business back then. I was only able to work on it 10 minutes a day. So after a couple of years, the book was finished, and it was called What is Your Honor Code? It was all bullet pointed, and I'm a master of questions. So I ask questions, and in bullet form, here are all the possible answers. So I had that for a while, and then fast forward to 2019. I had, obviously, from that time, my daughter now is like 24 years old. I learned a few things along the way. So I added about 8 more chapters. It is the old book of What is Your Honor Code, kind of spiced up. And it has 8 more chapters, and I changed the title to The Emotional Dictionary to the Soulful Self. The Emotional Dictionary to the Soulful Self. And it has a tagline, which is right behind me with the butterfly. When you're connected outside of yourself, you experience pain and heartache. When you connect from within, you experience freedom and purpose. And that's what we've been talking about today. Again, you can read it however you want. You don't have to start from the beginning. I'm a girl, that's bottom line, honey. Bottom line, what's the answer? We have no time. We're really busy. Bottom line, here's the bullet point, bullet point, lots of questions. And it's a workbook. At the end of each chapter, you have a whole page. You can do notes. It's amazing of how many people have also given their book away to other people, that I found as a norm. So I'm very happy with it. Butterfly, you'll see butterflies everywhere. It's transformation. We're in a cocoon. It's tight, it's controlled, there's hardly any movement, but it's birthing. You're creating, you're starting to grow, and then you transform into this beautiful freedom life of a butterfly.
I love the butterflies. I'm not sure if I ever told you this story, but the first time that I had a significant speaking engagement, somebody had given me the advice the night before. He had said, look, you're going to do awesome. Everybody has butterflies. He said, the trick is getting your butterflies to fly in formation. And that next morning, when I was at the venue, I was sitting there watching some of the other speakers. And then all of a sudden I looked up at the ceiling, and they had decorated the entire ceiling with this line of butterflies.
Oh my goodness. And that's called the energetic team at work.
Absolutely. And so butterflies have been from that moment forward. I've got this one big, beautiful butterfly necklace I tend to wear when I speak. And, and I'll see them at odd times that actually mean the world to me when I do see them. So
for sharing. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yes. Ingrid, I am so grateful that you joined us today. I'm sure that our time today left more questions than answers, and hopefully some answers as well. So I do hope that you'll come join me on future podcasts. I'm sure you're going to be I
want to be on weekly. Oh my.
Okay, so I muted for a minute for all of our guests. Yes, we have dogs in the house. It's kind of a zoo here, so I muted for a second to quiet them down. Anyway, yes, I would love to have you as often as you will join us. I truly, truly value our time together, both in the office and here on the podcast. And I just know that so many people will hopefully just, even if they take one small nugget, one small truth of the things that you shared today and apply it to their own lives within whatever framework and boundaries they set for themselves, they'll grow. Because I know I've been blessed by the time I've spent with you, and I'm grateful that you were here with us today, and I look forward to having you back many, many, many times. And
I would love it. I'm blessed. I had a ball, and honestly, I want to do this weekly and just do a little topic and then go with it. Yes.
Well, maybe we just set up a whole nother podcast weekly together. Wouldn't that be fun?
Thank you,
please
Brenda.
make sure that you send me the link for your book so I can put it in the show notes so that our listeners can get a hold of that book, because you do. I love the way you bullet things out and make it easy for people to understand and use and grow themselves. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
And everybody come back for more Cheap Mama next week.
Hey people, Transform You Media Network. If you are enjoying the Cheap Mama life, I want to tell you about more content that is similar to what you are receiving right now. If you are the type of person that enjoy inspiration or insightful wisdom that takes you away from the junk that they are giving to you in the mainstream, the Transform You Media Network is the place to be. You want to find more content like this over on our YouTube page, our Roku channel, or on Google Podcasts, Spotify, or Apple. Simply do a Google search, type in Transform You Media Network, or go over to our main website at transformyoubroadcast.com. That's transform the letter U, broadcast.com. See what we have to offer. We will transform your life and business. Hope you enjoyed that episode of the Cheap Mama Life Podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review right now if you haven't already, and hit that share button. Until next time.